Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Finance Zone. Today we're going to be talking about the rise of Nike, how one man built a billion-dollar brand. Make sure you stay as you do not want to miss out on this valuable information. Also, remember to subscribe and click on the notification bell. Nike, the world's most popular and biggest sportswear company. In just over 50 years, one man's dream of better shoes turned into a global corporation worth over $100 billion. Today, we're going back to the earliest days of Nike to figure out how that magic happened and what the ingredients were to their success. The world's most popular and biggest sportswear company. In just over 50 years, one man's dream of better shoes turned into a global corporation worth over $100 billion. The year is 1962, and Phil Knight had just graduated from Stanford. As any business graduate can tell you, becoming an entrepreneur is difficult if you don't have any good ideas. But Phil had one. He was a distance runner back in university, and in one of his business classes, he had written a paper proposing the following idea. Phil had seen how Japanese cameras had replaced the dominant German cameras in the American market, and he wondered whether Japanese shoes could do the same to Puma and Adidas, which were at the time extremely popular in America. Nike is the biggest sneaker maker in the US, putting it ahead of rivals Adidas and Under Armour. Its dominance in sports retail is undeniable, and it's also just an all-around beloved brand among teens, adults, and everyone in between. But what comes with being the best in the business is the ever-present threat of losing that top spot. Nike still has its work cut out for it. But back to Phil. After writing that paper and graduating, Phil became obsessed with his idea about bringing Japanese shoes to the USA. Of course, he didn't actually own any Japanese running shoes, and the few he had seen were brought stateside by soldiers who'd been stationed in Japan during the occupation after the Second World War. But this lack of exposure only reassured Phil that he had stumbled upon a great opportunity. He knew that to take advantage of it, he'd have to establish contact with a Japanese company and negotiate to import their goods to America, both of which were actions he had exactly zero experience with. But as if befitting the man who'd later create Nike, he went ahead and just did it. In November 1962, he flew over to Japan like a tourist and just started exploring. In the beautiful city of Kobe, he stumbled upon a shoe store that caught his eye. It belonged to a company called Onitsuka Tiger, and the shoes they made were, for their time, very high quality, so much so that Phil was determined to import them back home. In Japan, he presented himself as an American shoe distributor and arranged a meeting with the company's founder. Phil made up a company name on the spot and offered to become Onitsuka's distributor in America, a proposal which, probably to his surprise, the owner actually accepted. With nothing more than his confidence, Phil had become the exclusive distributor for Onitsuka Tiger in the USA. He received his first shipment of 12 pairs of Tiger shoes in 1963, and he started selling them out of the back of his car at every running track he could drive to. Obviously, though, his strategy wasn't scalable, so he went to the only person he knew who understood more about shoes than he did, his former coach at the University of Oregon, Bill Bowerman. Now, Bill was easily one of the most famous coaches in America at the time. He had, in fact, trained multiple Olympic athletes. He liked the Tiger shoes so much that he wanted to partner up. Thus, in January 1964, Bill and Phil incorporated Blue Ribbon Sports, each investing $500 into it. They spent all that money on their first order, which at $3.33 a pair amounted to 300 pairs of shoes. The shipment came through in April 1964, and thanks to Bill's connections, it was sold out by July. In their first year, BRS sold $8,000 worth of shoes, and with that money, Phil started hiring salesmen for his company. In 1965, the revenue had increased to $20,000, and pretty soon they opened their very own store in Santa Monica. But while Phil was handling the business side of the operation, the actual innovation was coming from Bill. He was the guy who single-handedly brought jogging to America. BRS becomes Nike. Phil and Bill knew that to expand, they would have to evolve beyond being just a simple distributor. Then they realized that they held all the cards. The Cortez was Bowerman's design. As soon as their contract with Onitsuka expired, they were free to start making it for themselves. Luckily for them, their contract would end in 1972, just before the Olympics in Munich. Thus, Phil had plenty of time to prepare for his big move. In 1971, he started working on the branding. His first employee suggested calling the brand Nike, after the Greek goddess of victory. Then, Phil needed a logo, so he went to a nearby university, snatched the first graphic design student he could find, and told her to make him a logo. For the impressive sum of $35, he got this, the Swoosh. In hindsight, that was money well spent, and with his branding now complete, Phil was ready for the Olympics. And when Phil started importing shoes from his Japanese subcontractors, the sales surged. And yes, he started before his contract had even expired in 1971. From then on, the story of Nike became one of growth. They became the largest sportswear company in America in 1989, on the back of brilliant marketing like the Just Do It campaign and by signing rookie athletes that would eventually become famous across the world. Some notable reasons for the success of this brand include 1. Nike logo. Nike has the most dynamic logo on the planet. Although it was famously designed by then-student Carolyn Davidson for only a few bucks, the Swoosh is one of the best logos of all time. It's simple, looks great on a shoe or anything else, and suggests activity, arousal, and victory at the same time. Perfect for a sports brand. Number 2. Nike started with running. There's no point in denying that the sneaker game has slowly shifted its focus to running. Even in the US, and regardless of all that Jordan hype, Nike started out as a running company, and not just track and field running. Co-founder Bill Bowerman recognized the potential of jogging in the early 60s and published a book with that title in 1966. His ideas led to the creation of a running shoe that would ultimately be named the Cortez in 1968. Number 3. Nike has Jordan. Despite its roots in running, Nike has been synonymous with basketball. And basketball is Jordan, to some extent. Together, they form the cornerstones for the rise of a global sneaker culture. Although Adidas has had successful basketball shoes a decade before, it was his airness who popularized sneakers as a fashion and style item. The Air Jordan 1 was also designed by Peter Moore, almost a decade before the same Peter Moore would design the 3 bars logo, which is now synonymous with Adidas equipment. Number 4. Nike owns collaborations. Although you will find single collaborations from other companies dating back to the 1970s or even before, Nike invented the collab game as we know it. From the late 90s, releases like the Wu-Tang Clan X Nike Dunk High or all the Stussy collabs from the early 2000s, up to the whole Nike SB program including all the Supreme Dunks, Nike got the ball rolling. Number 5. Nike owns basketball. Not because of names like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, or Kevin Durant, but because the Swoosh owns the category today. With a market share of 95% in the US, there's no way around the fact, although Adidas is making a lot of right moves at the moment. Number 6. Nike has Back to the Future. Nike's use of this movie wasn't just smart product placement, but arguably the most brilliant and long-term marketing move of the millennium, spanning 3 decades in the rollout. First, presenting the Nike Brune in Part 1 in 1985, in one of the most iconic pop culture movies ever. Second, fictionally imagining how sneakers would evolve 30 years later in Part 2 and introducing the Nike Mag. Third, actually releasing that shoe as predicted in the movie. Finally, with power lacing and endorsement by Michael J. Fox. No other company even comes close. Thanks for watching! While you're here, go ahead and click one of these 2 videos on your screen. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. See you there, and thanks for watching!